There we are. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. This is your Sensie Owl Bob. For some reason, my last show I did 2 days ago, I thought I said it on public. And then usually when I haven't, the three little dots on the side I would push, and it would say, settings, and doesn't do it now. Anyway, so this is just a report. We'll see, if this actually works, if it actually goes on a public foray. And my laptop isn't working, so I can't do it on that. So I'm doing it on a phone, which is problematic. But seemingly, so is our life, right? And the problematic part of our life is that the fascist elements that have always been there. You read the Bible, every element, there's good and evil, right? Fascists and freedom. That's basically the motif of the 21st century. And fascism is built on a number of things. The domestication of the public, the proles, as Orwell would say in 1984, and the creation of a super rich oligarchy. Right? And that oligarchy is usually totalitarian in essence, because power and money are almost synonymous, but pretty much are. And to keep power, one will do anything, right? That's why when I died in 2014, I basically got rid of everything. I simplified my life and started doing this thingamajig called the YouTube show, Dreamy Dreamland with Sensie Owl Bob. That's me. And don't believe a word I say. It's interesting to document. Like today, so, this whole week, here it is, it's Saturday already. So last week at this time, I was sitting in the same seat I'm sitting, and I was watching TV, and I was pretty much watching the Weather Channel, watching this hurricane that had kind of come into the Gulf of Mexico, went up the west side of Florida, and it didn't seem to be more than a storm. And then it increased, the barometer started to fall, and it increased to a hurricane and a level 1, then a level 2, and then as it got near Tampa, the size of the storm was quite large, 400 miles wide. The eye was about 50 miles in diameter. Usually they're 2 or 3 miles in diameter. And very, 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 very tight circle. No edge, no breaking, and a lot of thunderstorms on the west side, the early east side all the way to the west side. And that causes the spin even more. It energizes. And it was in the warm part of the Gulf of Mexico facing Florida. And but usually there is a wind shear, but there hadn't been any for a week, which was extraordinary. So there was no wind shear to tear it up. And as it grew closer to the shore, usually by doing that, it basically slows it down. And the water it's pushing gets pushed, and it causes a frictional coefficient to lessen the hurricane, right? But this didn't do that. in the last 60 miles or so between the ocean, and it was being, pushed into the panhandle of Florida, and it, you know, increased, and the barometric pressure went down, and the circle got tighter, and the storm got wider. I mean, from that point, it was having effects all the way to South Carolina. It was spurring um, tornadoes, right? And it basically came on land, and they had the ubiquitous person out there in the water, and it's usually the newbie they send out there. And what was quite amusing, that most of the guys and gals in the storm's way, were women of, around 40 to 50, and they weren't used to being blown around like that. They were like weather girls, but they kind of got a little, didn't look as good in the green screen as they used to. So they put them out there in the storm, and it was like, and there was one girl, she's out there in one of the little towns near Tampa, and it's like just she's being blown around, and the water's like going down her boots, and the sun is going down, and the light behind her shines. These crocodiles coming after, coming towards her, and she doesn't even see it. And the TV, you can almost tell the TV cameraman is just chuckling, seeing if she's going to be eaten. And it was just a foray to what was going to happen to Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and finally Tennessee. And as that storm came up, it did it very quickly. It was doing 25, 30 miles an hour. Again, not usually tornadoes do that. And if they do that, it burns themselves out. But this thing just got stronger. And so it really takes out the panhandle of Florida. And I watched this evening some videos of those areas, and they're just wrecked. The people's homes are like, forget about it, right? And there's nothing happening, meaning there are no resources being brought into play, right? And in Georgia, they don't even show Georgia what happened there, right? And then North Carolina, Asheville gets obliterated. I lived in Asheville for 10 years. And so I have a lot of friends there. And interesting sidebar is I visited friends there, about, the last time I was there, maybe 2 years ago. So I visited there. It was really nice. I had a nice dinner party. All my friends were there. And everyone was so concerned about Donald Trump becoming president. And, that the girl and grandpa were, or dad, however you want to look at him, with the saving grace. And I was trying to explain that it didn't really matter, that whether you got Donald or, the girl, you were basically heading for 1984, that we were already there, right? And, we have been past it, since 1984, really since 1948. Once they signed in 1947, the National Security Act in the United States, it was another brick in the wall, another chink out of democracy. And so, as time passed, people started to realize, with the development of the Cold War, and it was hard to understand how our ally defeating the Nazis could be now our new enemy, right? And we had given them all this economic support and military support to, waylay the Nazi threat, even though we created the Nazis, right? Via World War I and, the Versailles Treaty, and just go watch the movie Cabaret. It really portrays, the most democratic country in all of Europe at the time, economically crushed. The Depression comes on and crushes everyone. And Germany actually, even though France took all of their industry away, they still were doing pretty good, and the rest of the allies just kept doing stuff to Germany to push it under the bus more and more, to force the people into abject poverty. And so there's scenes in the cabaret that basically show this guy is walking down, and kind of crumpled but well dressed gentleman is walking down the street, and he meets some people in the street. Oh, professor, and this you find out this guy's a well-known professor in the university, but he's lost his job. He no longer has jobs. The brown shirts are everywhere. He's not Jewish, but but he's taking his grandchildren, two of his grandchildren, to the cabaret to sell into sexual slavery because his family is starving to death, and he'll get a zillion rubles, right, or marks for the kids, and that's seen. I mean, and everyone's so enamored by what's her name singing. Come to the cabaret, and that's where we're at, kids. We're at the cabaret, and it's we've already gone off the cliff, So good morning, good evening, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland. Your Sensie Owl Bob. How about some thumbs up? It would be nice. People are leaving in droves. We got up there to a maximum of 3. I don't know if this is going to go. I mean, it will go up on my channel. I set it to be public, and the last one I did that didn't. It stayed as like only I could look at it. Oh, so who's here? Let's put on the. Do I have my glasses? Yeah, I got my glasses. Oh. Hello, wherever you. What is that? I like your channel. Thank you. I appreciate that. Is that AI speak? Is that who that is? Anyway, there's 2 of you there. So I'll go on with the story. You like my stories, right? So here it is. Whatever, it's October, whatever it is, 8th, 9th, 10th. I've lost count. I haven't had electricity. I haven't had anything. But around 9 o'clock, guys finally got it up. Our utility company brilliantly decided, sorry, it was just a font. Okay, and you never have to apologize to your Sensie Owl Bob. You never have to say you're sorry, because I understand, right? And I appreciate everything you do, right? So, what are you in the United States? Did the hurricane affect you? Right. So as I was watching, virtually a week ago to this moment, the unbelievableness of the hurricane while everyone slept, I was hoping that because we've had amazing weather for the last year, and all the storms and everything have just come, because I live in the Appalachian Sawtooth Mountain Range, accordion between the Appalachian Mountain Range and the Blue Ridge. And usually storms come in here and just get tore up or punched to the north or to east or to the southeast of where we are. But no, man, this sucker hit us, came right up the Nolechucky, right up the French Broad. And we're above, meaning usually the water flows down the hill. I'm like 2,800 feet above Asheville, and Asheville is 4,800 feet above sea level. And usually whatever rain falls here goes down to them into Boone and then Asheville. But the water came up, and there was no wind and there was no rain. And our lake, we have a big lake. It's a big lake near me called Watoga. And the TVA is very good about raising it and lowering it. And they had raised it, expecting hurricane season. And so it was kind of low. And man, it just And it wasn't rain falling out of the sky. It was this mammoth storm surge, right? Like it was coming from the ocean. That's almost impossible. And here it's destroyed Asheville. It destroyed Irwin. God, man, Irwin, it took out 26. It knocked 26, Interstate 26 sideways. And so all of the river, the Noachukki, instead of going under 26, now 26, since it collapsed like this, the water hit it, and it shot all of that water into Irwin and obliterated it. It took up the hospital, and the major employer in that town, this whole place around here, we're about 100 and something miles to Oak Ridge, Tennessee, National Laboratory. And there are laboratories and facilities and manufacturing things all over these mountains that facilitate the military-industrial complex. And there was one facility that basically manufactured fuel rods for the U.S. Navy. The reactors that are on board ships are way more powerful than the ones that are, commercial grade, right? They burn way hotter. And so there's all this highly enforced stuff there, and it got obliterated. And my concern is, where did it all go? And B, if somebody had a bad attitude, they could just go look for it. And the really strange thing is the federal government's not here, state government's not here. Our county is forget about it. And everyone's fending for themselves. And what's the most beautiful thing out of this week is, so we're not getting any assistance, and everyone is helping each other. It's unbelievable, right? And so all of this amazing effort by the public to save, themselves and the people less, so my little place in the deep green, I never seen anything like it. So I live in a Sawtooth Mountain Range, right? So in my little cul-de-sac, I'm in the holler, the lowest part, but there's 4 mountains around me. I mean, my little 2 acres, there's 4, one on each corner. And so I'm like really down there, but I'm still on top. I mean, I'm at the highest point there, but the hills around me are higher than where I am. And back in the day, I cleared all the trees out that would, if they ever fell, would fall on me. So I cleared that all out. I mean, I had 2 acres, I cleared out about 1.5 acres. And I just left at the tops of all the ridges these gigantic poplars. And they're all bending away from me. So if they fall, they go the other way, right? And they act as lightning rods. Every summer we have thunderstorms, and the lightning, instead of hitting me, hits the top. So all the tops of those poplars are scorched, right, over the last 25 years. And so last Friday, and the storm was coming. I realized that. I just turned off the lights, went to bed when it got dark at about 7:30, 8 o'clock. And about, as soon as I kind of fell asleep, one of my buddies from the church came and got me. We're scared. So he took me to his house, and that was good. And but he woke me up and rushed me out of there so fast. I didn't take any, not my slippers, nothing. I had nothing. Just whatever the pants I put on, whatever shirt I had, and I did put on my little holler jacket, which is, really nice outdoorsy jacket that is thin and light, got a zillion pockets, so I could just put stuff in it. And I'm an electrician. I put a flashlight in my pocket and, took my wallet, my keys, and locked up and turned off the juice and got in his truck. And I should have taken, the vehicle that the church bought for me, but I have no idea. I just said, well, the storm won't be that bad. He'll bring me back after Sunday church and all will be well. But no. So that storm. So I'm sitting in this chair that I'm sitting in right now, watching the TV, and I'm watching all. They have this thing where they have all the different weather channels on one setting that you can go click, 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 and look at different things. I'm watching it. I'm realizing, and I know enough about weather. When I'm seeing these computer models, I'm going, well, there's something wrong with this. This ain't how it's supposed to work. And I have to move around. Otherwise, I rust. And so, and then I said, screw this. It's like 3 a.m. I'm just going to go to sleep. So I do. I'm going to bed they gave me and slept. And, woke up around 7:30 and my friends had gone, and where they were going, I had no idea. I looked around. It was just gray outside. It was like no wind, no rustling, no rain, just looking up there. So I just turned over and went back to bed and woke up around 11:30 in the morning, right? And I went, got up, went, to the toilet, I flushed and filled it back up, and I went into the kitchen and I, made myself a cup of coffee. Electricity was still on. And I was watching the TV, the weather, and they're like saying how everything is terrible and Florida's a mess and and I just kind of go, whoa, what's going on? Doesn't seem bad. I don't even see the tree, So my friends come in and they go, it's unbelievable. Everything's getting destroyed. I said, well, what about here? And she goes, well, there's some trees down the road that are down. And then all of a sudden the power went out. That was it. So, but our road wasn't broken up. And so, basically I said, well, I'm going back to bed. So I went back to bed. I don't know what they did. And then about 3 o'clock, they said, come on, get dressed. We're going to go drive around and see what's going on. And we did. And, we got out of, they live almost right next to the main road. We got on the main road and we went towards my place. And we got down about a mile and came around a bend. And the whole friggin' mountain, it didn't slide down. What it looked like was that Tesla had a device, because he was all about harmonics, about frequencies, about waves. He said that was the secret to, Einstein said E equals MC square, and Tesla was more about scalar waves, right? And so, he made this little device about the size of a pack of cigarettes, and he attached it to the metal I-beam of the building. Was in Mohawk Electric Building on the corner of Hudson and Duane. I used to live in that building. And he turned it on. It didn't, it was a little buzzy sound, and he didn't really make it no 9. And then he went and made himself a sandwich and was fooling around with something else. And the cops came in. Dr. Tesla, what are you doing? And he goes, what do you mean? He said, well, the building, the new, the tallest building in the world that was at that time going to be the Woolworth building, or whatever they call that building, there across the street from City Hall on Broadway. And they said, it's shaking apart. And he goes, oh, I left that little device on. Pack of cigarettes, he hits a little switch, it goes off. That's kind of what it seems like happened to this neck of the woods. Something of an extraordinary, because it had nothing to do with nature. It wasn't raining, it wasn't blowing wind, it wasn't doing anything. But this whole mountain, it was as if the trees, it wasn't like the mountain slid down. We have that occasionally. When we have really super duper gully washes, when we got an inch of rain an hour for about 4 hours, and it's like 4 inches of rain. And we can have slides that way. But this wasn't a slide. This whole side of the mountain that had trees that were mostly poplar, the trees exploded out of the ground, right? And so they weren't on the road, but they were like, just almost over the road. And they knocked a great deal of the power lines down. Now, the power lines are designed, wires that are carrying the current, especially, we live right off the main line. So those suckers are high voltage, probably 18,000 volts. And from pole to pole to pole, they have a mast that goes sideways, and there's the insulators, right? And it's designed if a train falls down, the wire snaps at the insulator, so it doesn't take down the pole or a series of poles. But last summer, the rich came in and they wanted the broadband, and the federal government, gave money to build broadband into rural areas like 10 years ago. Never did it, but rich people showed up. So they got it. So it's supposed to be put in the ground, but they didn't. They stuck it on these power poles, which weren't designed to carry anything more than the power lines, right? Now, the fiber optics are these black cables, and they have Kevlar around them, right? And then they have wire wrapped around that, like a net. And so they're pretty indestructible. So when the tree fell on the wires, the power lines snapped like they're designed to, but the Kevlar, And so the tree hit that. Instead of one pole going down, 20 went down. And our utility was brilliant. They sent 60% of our trucks and linemen to Florida on Wednesday of the week before to get ready for the big hurricane in Florida. But it left us with only 40% of the guys, and they have this rule where they leave 11% of everybody in the barn just for a case of an emergency, right? Anyway, so we had no utility workers, right? And no lights, right? And trees all over the place. No county workers showed up. Nobody showed up. DOT, nobody. And it was a mess. And so we drove around to the point where we couldn't, because the lake had washed away a chunk of the main road, right? I mean, it looked, and I hadn't noticed anything else. I mean, the TV was gone, so I didn't see that Irwin had been obliterated. I didn't see Asheville got obliterated. I didn't see that 3 or 4 other towns around here got obliterated. And chunks of we only have 421 and 321 are the 2 roads in the 500 square mile radius of this Sawtooth Mountain Range accordion between the Appalachian and the Blue Ridge Mountains. And so it was like, this is just, it was just a font. No problem, Like I said, never say you're sorry to me, because I love you, right? So anyway, that was, Saturday, and then we gotten on the road, and we got to pass our church, so we could get to church. So normally there's maybe 60 to 120 people at church. It was maybe 40 to maybe 40 people, and nobody was dressed up for Sunday. They were like, got their muddy boots, and everyone, because a lot of people around. We didn't get destroyed that much. No electricity, trees all over the place, but the house where I was in, this house, was not destroyed. My place had no idea, right? So we went to church, and it was the best church service there was, because everybody was in their civic, their work clothes, right? And the pastor wasn't in his $200 suit; he was in his work clothes, and he did a really good job. Normally, but he really was doing it from his heart, and everyone felt it. And instead of sitting in the pews, we all went to the altar and lied down and hugged each other for 40 minutes while he spoke. And he did a great job. He spoke from his heart. He really, he quoted a few things, but normally he's a real quoter, and he always has to read the book. Me, I don't quote anything. I'm not a big fan of quoting the verse. I basically, tell a story. I read a part of the Bible, and it affects me in a positive way. And I usually write about things, and by writing, it makes me sharpen my feelings about how I feel, right? And that's everyone should do that. Not read the Bible per se, unless you want to. Read whatever book you want to read, but reading really gets inside of different parts of your spiritual, emotional, intellectual point of view, and it gives a real opportunity to speak. And that's why this show is a live chat, right? And our brother, whatever his name is, or sister, said hello. And I'd love it to hear from any of you guys. I know it's late. It's like 1 a.m. here. I know it's late. I'm tired. I've worked all day. So I'll tell you a little more of the story. So the church was really great. And so there's a public school across from the church that has been connected, for the last 100 years. Those two institutions were as one, right? Even though the school is run by the county and has been the best school in the whole county, right? And then the rich people came in, and they wanted to push all the kids into one building so they wouldn't have to pay that much property tax on teaching the kids. They're not their kids. They're old people. They couldn't care if they got educated or not. And so all the kids, they no longer go there. And so we said, why don't we turn this into a community center? And the county said, that might be not a bad idea because, we have done a lot. The church had done a lot of stuff of that matter, had used the building for that matter. And now, that part of the county needed, because this is kind of poor rural, working folk. And so they were leaning to do it because it was no skin off their nose. We were going to do everything, and they could take all the credit. And we told them that, So whenever I go to, I speak to everyone individually, right? I don't go to meetings and make speeches. I speak to people individually so I can tell them how I really feel without them having to be surrounded by people who would judge how they respond to me, right? So that's my shtick. And I have no trouble speaking to the governor, the president, anybody, but I do it in that way so they don't get embarrassed and they can actually respond honestly. And that's been part of my career for most of my life, my godfather, Cardinal Cushing, he said, when I was 4, I was talking to him about stuff, and he goes, Al, don't you know what I am? And I said, sure, you're a guy who wears a funny hat. He laughed, and he goes, no, come on. And he goes, of course I know what you are. You're like Cardinal Cushing, the guy who's like 3 hats to the Pope, Yeah, so what? And he'd laugh again. He goes, Al, you have this amazing ability to talk truth to power in a way that is endearing, right? Because you're only 4 and you're an amazing diplomat, right? Other than being a rocket scientist. He wanted me to be a rocket scientist for the Pope. And that's why I got so well educated. He kept putting me in these amazing educational institutions, right? Which were, right. Anyway, so I've already spoken to all the powers that be around here, the state, the county, the federal. And, for years, last 10 years, I've been saying, hey, you guys, this place is really sensitive. You can't let this become another Asheville. it won't, it can't take it. There's Sawtooth Mountain. It's not like you can put roads anywhere you want. And, and the money that was coming in was mostly mob money, right? Because they were doing such stupid stuff. They were spending millions to build, gated communities where you couldn't even get to. And I realized what they're doing. It's just like the place I lived in. It was a scam. These guys came in, bought this little truck farm that was terraced, right? And they took a bulldozer up one side and around the other and paved it, put in water and power in the ground, and then sliced up into about 40 lots and sold it to a religious cult in Florida. And they thought the end of the world was going to come, and God told them that these mountains would be safe, and they relatively are. And so they bought it sight unseen, and they looked at some photos, and boy, that's pretty. And there was water in the ground, power in the ground, a nice paved road with gates on either end. And when it came up there, all the properties like basically a cliff. There's no, to build a house costs you a fortune. You could do it. Over in Banner Elk and Boone and Grandfather Mountain and places like that, they've done the same thing. Grandfather Mountain, they built, a 20-story skyscraper on the side of a cliff. You're in those condos, you look out the window, the view is friggin' amazing. But if you go out on your little patio, you get blown off. The wind is so constantly intense. Anyway, so this is a very paranormal neck of the woods. And nature is 100% alive. And if you are, respectful and loving of nature, man, I've had this place for 25 years. And, 21 of those years, it has been like a nature preserve. This beautiful place with everything I needed and wanted. Cost me nothing. I had money. I built a nice little deck up the side of a cliff, and has a great view, and my little man cave where I sleep, and inside stuff is down below. Not underneath it, but I cleared everything, took all the trees down, cleared everything, put a lot of French drains in, and covered it in stone, and grew everything on top of it. And this place will grow anything, even on top of stone. And after 20 years, it's unbelievably gorgeous, right? So anyway, that's the neck of the woods I live in. And so I'm at my friend's. So Sunday is everything. What are we going to do? And the county had just, we wanted to open that place as a community center, in May. And they hemmed and hawed about it until like a week ago before the storm, and they gave us the key. And they had ripped everything out, all the computer stuff, kitchen stuff, the hot water. They didn't really destroy it. They could have left because they probably threw everything away, right? The computer's like from the 90s, right? But they had nice internet, good server. They took the server, they took the routers, but they left the wires. At least they did that. And we'll just have to put all that stuff in. So the storm comes, we have the key, we decide, well, it's still standing, it's well protected, and they had turned off the water, right? So the head guy of this zone of the state, he showed up on Monday, and he was going, oh, it's a real mess. We have no place to do anything. Everything's like Hampton and all these other places where they had the shelters, the state-sponsored shelters, were wiped off the map, right? And about 3,000 people had no place to stay, the Walmarts everything was closed, right, and mushed, and it was a mess, right? And so, okay, sure. For this little area around us, we'll take care of everybody. And the only thing the county, that he's not the county guy, he's a regional guy. He gave us a generator. Not a gigantic generator. Not any. But a generator. So the next day, this guy shows up who kind of works for, I don't even know who, but like a tech company. And he is their tech guy who goes and does things for churches and poor people. And so he shows up at the front door here, knocks on the door. He said, "Hey, I hear you're so-and-so, and the regional people said that you're going to turn the school into, so why, and you have no internet, no phone, and no power, so why don't," he had a Starlink. So I put Starlink up, and he had a server, and he had Wi-Fi, and so we got Wi-Fi, right? And so I had a friend of mine had some extension cords, and this guy had some, he had gone to Harbor Freight the day before, and before everyone wiped the place out, he bought extension cords, plug strips, and quartz lights, right? So I strung them up around the place so no one would kill themselves. And I was going to backfeed that little generator into the whole building, but I said, nah, I better not do that. Be like, if the power ever came on, it'd be not good. So I didn't. I just strung the extension cords around and lit the place up and put plugs everywhere so people could charge their phones, right? And their devices. So when that guy who was regional, and he kept saying, "I'm the commissioner." I said, "What are you, commissioner? Commissioner of schools, commissioner of roads?" What? "I'm the commissioner." "Commissioner of what?" And he goes, "Of everything." "Oh, you're the dude, right?" So I kept calling him the dude. His name his last or first name started with a D, so I would say the dude. Anyway, he came, so we got this thing going, and people came from everywhere and just put water and diapers and you name it, and we filled up. We had a gigantic gym. We had full of stuff, right? And the classrooms were full of stuff, and we just let the people. The first 2 days, they were in shock. They didn't have clothes, they had no food, they had no anything for the kids. We just filled their car up with stuff. Not just one box. We just filled it up with stuff and just kept them going out. And people just kept bringing more stuff in. It was unfriggin' believable. And so we were really doing the job. And then Red Cross came and said, "You're not certified to do this. We have to close you down." And there were, I tried to be diplomatic. I said, "Come on, look what's going on. Are you doing it? Where's the Red Cross? You want to come and do this? No problem. But until you show up with resources, we're going to continue to feed these people," because we were feeding them too. And she said, "Well, you're not certified." And she just kept saying, I said, "Lady, you're certifiable." And there were like holler guys who were going to like beat her with, and I said, no. I said, "I think you should just leave." So she left. And then the FEMA guy came and said the same thing. I said, "Come on. Where are you? If you show up and take over, no problem." They didn't, right? And then they stopped coming because they were, we were servicing a few hundred people every hour, and people were bringing more stuff. It was unbelievable. And morons, because 2 miles down the road from us, the road was totally washed out, and tractor trailers were still trying to drive up the interstate down this little county road to get into North Carolina, and they were like going off the side of the road, and we were having to go get them out, and there was no like big tow trucks, and we were chopping trees down. We were going out in crews, cutting people out of their houses, and that's what we did all this week. And it was the best thing I've done in a long time. And everybody was really happy. And it was amazing. It was like miraculous. And all the people who wanted to be in charge were in charge, right? And everybody who was working were working, and it all was so smooth. There were no like, meetings or committees, or it was just working really good, right? And I didn't want to do this stuff. Who wanted to be out there and say, put it over there, put it over there. And if they were doing something weird, I'd just go, hey, come on, breathe, breathe. And I would give them a few tips, and then they would go up, and so that's what I'm good for, right? And when young men would show up who said, we want to cut wood, I would put them in their 4-wheel drive car because I didn't have a car, and we'd go out and cut grandma out, right? And we were cutting the trees in the main roads, and then around Tuesday, our state Department of Transportation, TDOT, showed up, and these were guys who didn't, their trucks and everything from a different region, but they had grown up in our neighborhood and still had grandma and mama and Mamo and Papo still around, and so they were worrying. So they cut themselves into our thing and started doing the work that the freaking county. And we didn't have heavy equipment at all. We had chainsaws, and so those guys came and did a great job. And there was on the larger county road near the lake, the restaurants along there, they had no power, so they got out their gas stuff, and no, they didn't get ruined. There's just no power, so they had like lots of food in their freezers and in their walk-in coolers that were gonna just have to be thrown away. So they cooked all that stuff up. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, there were 4 restaurants that just constantly fed everyone for free. It was great. It was amazing. And they've got to be able to take it off on their insurance. And they, fed everyone. And they will get lots of people will come into their restaurants for just that favor that they did, right? They got a lot of community, brownie points for doing what they, and it was a great thing. So our whole 3 county, this little area, this zone that we're in, that's our 3 counties, and that's why none of the counties take responsibility, because they can blame it on the other county. Anyway, everyone who was there did an amazing job, right? And so that was great. It was so by Wednesday we had all the roads cleared. There were a couple of, again, like utility guys from the other side of Tennessee came, again, because they grew up there and they were concerned about their families. And even though the hierarchy of their institutions said didn't give them permission, they just took the trucks and the materials came up and fixed our power lines. They did a really good job on the main lines. The ones further in, not so much. And so by Wednesday, all the main lines were on. And if you were on the main line and your line wasn't broke, you had electricity. So instead of everyone without electricity, now 60% of everyone had it, right? And a number of those guys, they might have gotten fired for this, but they stuck around. Even today, they were still here getting the last few people up there, who probably wouldn't see electricity if they depended on our utility to do it. So it was unbelievable, amazing example of what when you work with your neighbor. That's what humans are the best at. When humans can work together, it's unbelievable, and it's always for the best. So I must have dealt with 1,000 people this week, right? I can only say there were 2 people who were jerks. This one guy drove up. He has a big house on the lake. He drove up in his, Lincoln, a gigantic diesel monster vehicle. Not to say that other people don't have strange vehicles, but these, right? And he drives up, and it's like he's going through McDonald's. He goes, I need water and ice. I said, good. It's a pile of water. I mean, we had a mountain of blocks, and we just didn't give bottles away. We gave the blocks of like 32 bottles. I said, just grab a couple of those and come on in and get a couple bags of ice. He says, you should just put it in you can just, I'll pop the back. You just put, I said, no, this ain't, this ain't a restaurant, this ain't a hotel, you know. And so, and he goes, well, I've never been talked to like this. And I was being nice. And I said, and then I turned into, the soup Nazi, no soup for you, no ice for you. Anyway, he started screaming at me, and his wife, was like, oh, George, maybe, and look at everyone has like so much less than we do. We can, you shouldn't yell at this guy's like he's giving us ice and water. Shut up, Mabel. And so she gets out of the car, and she goes over and gets, she's a little woman, right? And the guy stays in the car, right? So then I take her into the building where we have these freezers, and everything at this point is still running off this little generator, and I just keep extending extension cords all over the place, and we have freezers in there, and so we're keeping the ice. I mean, it's melting, but not as fast if it just stayed outside. So anyway, so I get that, and we had this big box of coolers, right? All kinds of coolers, like coolers with Michael Jackson on it that you take for lunch. Big ones that had wheels, like you wheel beer to your party. Anyway, so this he's gotten out of the car. Well, me and Mabel are bringing out 3 or 4 bags of ice. He's in there, and he's rumbling around in the box, and he's taken 4 big coolers with wheels on, right? All the big ones with wheels, he's taken them all. Again, there's these guys on the other side, like 100 yards away, big burly guys, farmer guys and worker guys, and they're watching this guy do that. And one guy kind of heard the little tete-a-tete that I had with this guy. So I'm coming out with Mabel, and she's unbelievably embarrassed that he's doing this. George, don't do that. Just take one. We have one at home. We don't need it. And we need these. And we didn't do anything other than say, "Excuse me, no, you got one at home. That's good enough. See you later. You can leave now." And he did. So that was the one guy, and there was another guy who was just twisted about his politics. Right? All he could talk was about, Donald Trump and the girl and blah, blah, blah. And he wasn't doing anything, right? And all these guys knew him, and they said, "You can go home now, Bob." And so out of thousands of people I saw, served each of those days, just 2 of those morons, right? So that's pretty good, right? And everybody else who was there, and people would come. They didn't, no one told them. They didn't go to our church. They just came and worked. And they worked for 10 hours, lifting stuff, carrying stuff, doing, making bags. And we got really organized, right? Because the first 2 days, we just let people walk through and take, we gave them a box and they could take whatever they want. And we had all the water and that kind of stuff out there. And we would just, give them as much as they wanted, right? But then we made a pretty good system. Somebody came and gave us these like, you get like, the kind of bags you get at a supermarket, so you don't use a plastic bag. It's pretty big. You can take, all of your stuff you buy at the supermarket if you don't buy like 6 carts of food, but whatever you would get, it could fit in, like 10 cans of this and some packs of that, and whatever, right? And we were giving everyone, kids with babies, we were giving them diapers and Pampers and wipes and all the baby stuff you need. And people just kept bringing more and more and more. And then the county guy came by, like I think on Tuesday or Wednesday. I totally lost whatever day it was. And, he was... he was almost in tears, and he was really great because what he did was he went back to where the federal guys were, because they started to try and close down because there were other places that were collecting food and handing it out, and it wasn't as big a thing as we were doing, and so they were trying to close those places down, and people were like revolting, right? And they didn't come to our place because we were really doing the job. I mean, doing it better than they. And so the only people who came who um, were national or international was, like I said, the Red Cross lady said, "Oh, you're not certified. We have to close you down," right? And that didn't happen. But the Salvation Army came, and they brought their food truck and put it out at the church, and then they put a tent at the back of the school, and we were giving everyone hot meals, and that was really good. And then, what day is today? I guess it was Friday. So Thursday, I decided, because everything was well oiled, electrically, everything, and so I guess on the Tuesday when the commissioner came in, he was like in tears. I said, "Listen, you've got to go get that water turned on," because it was just I said, if I had known better, I brought my water key, the big long thing that you put down there and you turn to the valve. And so he said, "I'll do it." And he did. He actually went and got one of those things with a guy and did it. Like he said, "I'm going to do that." Right. And then I said, the other thing is, our utility has totally failed. And he goes, "Yeah, well, there's guys from other states." I said, "Go talk to them and tell them we need power." And so he said he would. And I don't know, he didn't quite, have that ability. So on Wednesday, when I drove to the school, because on Monday and Tuesday, we had gotten everything rolling pretty good by Monday. So these guys came with four-wheelers and lots of chainsaws. And I said, "Let's go cut out Grandma." So we drove all over the place. And these guys knew the place better than me. I was just there to, give moral support, basically. So the first place, the trees it was just unbelievable. They were everywhere, and they were gigantic trees, 40-inch diameter, poplars, 200 feet tall, and they were like fallen, they had like exploded out of the ground and shot uphill. And so the heavy ball was, and it wasn't like the tree fell over. It wasn't like the tree snapped. It was like it was jettisoned, into the air, a 200-foot thing that probably weighed, 6 tons. And, it's like, what is going on here? And so we cut this one grandma out, and we had to do 20 trees. And they were all like on top of each other. So when you cut one off, the other one snapped. I mean, it was deadly work. And these guys weren't arbiters, These guys were, kids going to high school, kids, guys working as electricians or working in the factory. I mean, they cut wood up, they cut trees down, and they're holler folk, but they don't do this as a living. I mean, there were a couple of guys who were there on Sunday and Monday, but then they had to go do their gig, who were good guys. So we cut hard things that was nearby us. The first thing that those guys did was they started cutting down the trees so the utility guys could get in and take care of the poles. They didn't get rid of them. They just kind of cut them down and it was amazing. They could make them go almost, it's like they were levitating these trees. They couldn't get rid of them, but they could get them out of the way for the utility guys, right? So anyway, it was either Tuesday or Wednesday when I was driving over to the spot, the site. We called it the site. And there was a utility truck, like at the place I went down and got coffee, because this restaurant was giving free coffee and whatever they made for breakfast, eggs or sausage and, pancakes or whatever, right? And I've known those guys forever. And so, I came by, get my coffee, get my little And they were, no styrofoam anything. They just had nice, like the paper you would wrap up a sandwich. They would give you your breakfast and wrap it up, and you could eat it like that. So anyway, I go down there, get that, and there's this power company, right? And it's from the other side of Tennessee. And I go, hey guys, what are you working on now? I says, well, we are just doing like the old days. We're just driving around looking for what needs to be fixed. Perfect. I said, do you have a bucket truck? Yes. Do you have a clamp truck? Yes. Do you have your your truck of all the incendiaries? Yes. And and I was talking in their vernacular. And he said, were you a lineman? I said, yeah, when I was a youngster, not now. And so, but I said, I got a job for you guys. And so, because they didn't know the lay of the land, they had no top maps, they had no maps of the system. Well, I know the system real well, right? So I took them to the part of the main line. Main line was pretty good for half of the line, right? And they also had a couple of pickup trucks, right? So I drove my vehicle to this site where this one tree took down the crossover main line, right? That stopped that whole section of our area from having, it's not, the rest of it was fine. And so I said, we need a new pole here. We need to cut all this shit out. And we have to drive about 6 miles down the road and pull out. They have like little knife switch so you can disconnect parts of the line. And all the one lines, let's unplug them because I'm sure there are trees on those lines. But the main line, let's get that done. And that's what the site was on the main line. And so they did. And so that was like Tuesday or Wednesday. And by Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon, so I went and turned off the main breakers and all the other incinerators. And the emergency lights were on a separate isolated circuit at, right at the beginning because, you don't want your emergency lights not to work. So, I left that on and the generator's still going and I got lights in at the site, lighting everything up. And until about 11:30, noon, I'm sitting in this room making sure the internet is still up and the stuff is still working. And then that little emergency light went on. I said, oh, goody, we have electricity. So I went and threw the main breaker and then went to all the other panels and started turning them on and turned all the breakers for everything else. And I went around and, hit the switches in the rooms and the lights went on. And everyone was like, wow. Ooh-wee. So I made no big deal of it, I turned off the generator because we didn't need that no more. And I, took out all my little temporary lighting and rolled that up and put that in a closet just in case. And then I went back to more of the youngsters showed up with chainsaws and 4x4s and we went out and cut trees. So I said, let's go over to my place. So we cut my place out. And nothing, tree fell on the deck, no fell on the man cave, no, because I cut all the trees out. So there was no trees to hit anything. Now, some of those poplars at the top of the ridge, they had grown over 25 years, another 60 feet. So they fell down, but they're like bending the other way, right? But if they did, it wouldn't hurt anything. It would just make it a little messy. We'd have to do a little more trimming here and there. So in my car, the car that the church people got me to ride around it, so I drove out and, bingo bango. So that was pretty much my experience this week, and it was really great. And the other side of the coin, the most amazing thing, and so I talked to thousands of people during this week, and the basic, my little riff that I was talking about was, guys, it's a miracle, pretty much. I mean, about 160 people died around here. 800 are missing. And the only thing the federal government did was they went up to Pogie Land where the mobster real estate guys bought up all of Pogie Land And there were about 80 families, about 1,100 people that refused to sell because, oh, we've had this farm for 9 generations. We're not selling. We don't need, you're going to give us chump change anyway, so fuck off. So the federal government went up there with, Chinooks and Blackhawks and took everyone away and said that, this was a national emergency and they had no rights to say they're, not going. And if they don't get on a helicopter, no one's going to come and save them, period, right? So most of them got on. There were probably 200 because they had animals. They want to leave their cows and dogs and whatever they had, so they said, no, we're staying here. And they had their shit kind of together, so they're farmers, they didn't need to run away, so they can't drive anyway. Big deal. Sooner or later, that road will get fixed and we can wait. So the guy said, okay, well, we're not coming back. And what was really interesting was no media showed up, nobody. No newspaper, no TV, nobody. And there were so many great stories. It was like, but it was a positive story message. I mean, it wasn't a catastrophe. It wasn't like, it was as bad as the Gaza Strip could get. And yet, because we weren't being bombed 24/7, it was the bad thing happened. And that was as bad as the Gaza Strip could get if it wasn't for, but, Israel will use nuclear weapons on the Gaza Strip, Hamas, and Iran. And there will be a big war in the Middle East. And there will be no oil. And that will give economic distress. But what we experienced was that we don't care because we took care of ourselves. We cared for our neighbors, and that made everything work out. Right? We didn't need the federal government. We didn't need the state government. And that's one reason why the corporate media isn't here telling the story, because it's too amazing, too positive, too much of an example. So they'll have to newspeak it the other direction. So the electricity in this house went on, what time? It's 1 o'clock. It went on around 9 p.m. So I got to watch TV, and I was watching the news. Nobody's talking about any of this. It's like it never happened. And they're talking about, Trumpy and the girl and this and that, and Ukraine and the two lads and blah blah blah. And basically, if we have given Ukraine everything they need to kick Vlad's ass. And to show what a paper tiger is, but he's still got nukes, right? But if his nukes work as well as his tanks and artillery and aircraft have, well, maybe they won't work. But I'm betting dollars to donuts at some point, because the Ukrainians with their Heathkit, Radio Shack, Walmart drones, they were bombing they're not gigantic jet planes. They got like a $200 kamikaze drone taking out their oil rigs. Anyway, once, and they're taking out the power grid. Russia's trying to do that to Ukraine, but, anyway, it's obvious that there will be a nuclear exchange. And if Russia just drops something he will start with tactical ones. And if he, hits any NATO country with one of those things, that's all in. And within 20 hours, NATO will eat, it will chew up every Russian in Ukraine and then go into Russia, right? And just, go after them. Big time, and bomb all of the airfields, take out all their military industrial, what's ever left of it. And so I would say Putin could easily throw a few nukes, at our way, and you could probably say goodbye to Atlanta, Chicago, and Miami. Those are the three cities that are in the Venn diagram of not being able to be protected by our Star Wars anti-missile system, right? Now we have, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of, what do they call it? Solar Warden. I mean, see, this is all a comic book tragedy, a soap opera, you know. So this is the kind of big, problem, action, solution that we need to bring on Mr. Globaloni's new solution, where we're going to have, you know, your face. Well, you won't need your driver's license anymore or birth certificate or anything. They will digitally snap your it, and you'll be able to walk into, if you are a favored citizen, if you're doing all the right stuff, being a good pro for Big Brother, you'll be able to walk into a store. There will be no more money, no more cash, period, because they want total control and, observation. That's what this cell phone thing is. This is, surveillance economy, right? And now they're just going to take it one step further. And we will get goggles. Did you ever see Steven Spielberg's Player One? That's kind of the, where they have all the mobile homes stacked on top of each other in 15-minute cities. I mean, yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be. So there's one guy there. Is that you, AI? Or, how come no one's saying anyone? No, there's nobody saying anything about this. Well, I'm getting tired. It's 2:00. Yes, time for your Sensie Owl Bob to go to sleep. So I just wanted to give you the good news that if you make community in your community, you can have the world you want. If you let yourself be domesticated and addicted to convenience, it's not going to be a good world for you, bud. So basically, we will have go watch that 1960s version of 1984 that was made in England. That was the best one. If you want that world, go along to get along. Otherwise, learn who your neighbor is. Have a good cup of tea with them. Play chess with them. Have a book club. Have potluck dinners. Have a life. I love you. Gotta go.